Now that you've met our couples, we can't wait to hear more of their stories, so let's jump right in and talk about the lifeblood of every marriage, communication.
So as we all know, communication can be difficult, especially between a husband and a wife. I know often I'll call Greg at work and just launch into a story. For example, one day I was going at lunchtime to play cards with a bunch of my friends. And, I had the address, I put it into my GPS, and I pulled up when it said you had arrived. So I got out of my car, walked up the sidewalk, got to the front door, and there was even a sign that said, come on in. So in I went, and I started to look around, and I thought, this doesn't look the same. And I started to realize that I didn't really recognize any of the women either, but I figured, other women are playing this month. And so then a woman in the other room stood up and she said, okay, ladies, come on in for the school meeting. And so so she said, are you not here for the school meeting? And I said, no, I'm here to play cards. And she said, who plays cards at lunchtime? And so she said, whose house are you looking for? So I told her and she said, oh, that's 2 doors up. Humiliated. But I had to call Greg and let him know that this crazy thing had just happened to me.
Even though I was in the middle of work when Aaron called, and I think I was really focused on something, which oftentimes is hard. So Aaron will call if I'm in the middle of something. It's really hard to connect. But that really is what you were trying to do. Mm-hmm. You weren't trying to waste my time or interrupt my day. You were trying to connect. And that's the essence of communication. It's all about connection. Mm-hmm.
There's a researcher here in the States, Dr. John Gottman, who looks at bids for connection, that actually when our spouse approaches us and brings something up, like, hey, listen to what happened to me today, really what I was saying is I want to connect with you. And we have a choice. We can ignore it or we can turn towards and embrace that opportunity. And that's what Greg did that day. I called, although he was working, we had an opportunity to connect.
Well, let's now turn to our couples and hear how they've used communication to connect in their marriage.
I remember once we were driving together. We were going on this trip, and at the side of the road, they were selling watermelons. I just said, oh, look, they're selling watermelons. I like watermelons. And that was it.
And I was
And Jason just told me, yeah, I know you like watermelons. And he kept driving. And I got really sad and I started feeling bad and I got angry. And Jason was like, why are you angry at me? What's wrong? And I said, I told you about the watermelons. And he told me, no, you told me you like watermelons, but you did not tell me that you wanted watermelons. So I understood that I can't just say something and like interpret that Jason's going to interpret it what I'm trying to tell him to do if I don't actually tell him what I really, really want. We passed a while ago.
Yes.
Again, and they were selling watermelons, and I told him, I want watermelons. So we bought the watermelons.
Some of the lessons that I've learned about communication in our marriage, I've learned that it's actually not good to come into marriage with a lot of assumptions about marriage and how, I think because I work at Focus on the Family, you kind of have you know what you should be, how you should be talking and how communication is supposed to go. And then coming home and then that's not happening. For me, it would cause a lot of frustration where I felt like we were just not doing the right thing. We were not. And Usbu felt like, he felt like I had a lot of expectation, very high expectation of how he was supposed to communicate and how we're supposed to communicate as a couple. So it used to cause a lot of issues for us where he felt like I didn't receive how he's communicating and how he's wired. I already had standards for him that I needed him to rise up to, So I think that was kind of a big barrier in the first years of our marriage. But I think I've learned how to allow him to communicate the best way that he can and allow him to be himself and allow me to kind of, grow to understanding how he communicates and how I can better communicate because of how he's wired as well.
I'm not very good in listening, and I confess, I know that I'm not very good in listening. Okay, sometimes I pretend I'm listening and I just nod with my head like this. And I know that sometimes even my opinion is not very effective. So I stay silent, and when I say my opinion, she do always the opposite. So
Just about clothes.
yeah, just close it. Yes, for main events that happens in my life, of course, I have no other choice. I always share my experience with her. This is good for me because sometimes I'm rushed, and she is my mindset. She is my no, you have to wait. You have to go that way. What about doing this stuff? And so I really respect her opinion most of the time, and I love to share my experience life with her.
When I want to share something, I can never wait. So as soon as the thing happen, I keep calling him. I keep trying to reach him wherever he is. If you are at home, definitely I will go directly and tell him. But even if he was out, I just text him or send him a message or tell him just the super title of the news of what I want to share.
Which is a little bit annoying, by the way. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes I'm doing my work and I have some stuff to do, and she calls me, can you imagine what happened with my friends? Okay, come on, Dina, this is not the right time. Let's make it later. So sometimes it's annoying, but it's okay. I mean,
it's very important that, well, for me as a wife, that I can see that Brendan is listening to me. So he needs to nod and he needs to say, yes, dear, or words to that effect, and not be looking at his phone. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of our weaknesses, but I think that's a human thing too, in the sense that you always tend to want to process the next phase in the discussion. You're thinking about your next point that you want to make, and you don't really listen. And I think particularly for us blokes as well, we don't often hear what's being said. We hear what we want to hear so we can fix it. But what we want to fix often is actually not the thing that needs to be heard and listened to.
Doreen will always tell me, please, could you do this? And I don't know what I hear, but I hear something. And when she comes home, it's usually not done. But yeah, we try and work it. I mean, so now I've asked her to write things down for me, because when she lays out her instructions, sometimes it feels demeaning. It's like, oh, now she's mothering me. But if she writes them down, I'm easily receptive towards them, and then I can execute them.
Yeah, and I think a miscommunication for me as well. Like I normally think that Usbu's like me, where I tell him something, I think that he's received it, and I'll come back and it's not done, and he's like, please remind me, and I'm like, but I said, please do this, and he's like, but please remind me because I'm not wired like you. So it's a miscommunication because I think that he's gonna grasp it just because I've said it, because that's how I am. When you say something, I receive it and I'll do it.
And
but
I'm usually in the nothing
not,
box during that time.
But
right?
he's not. I need to remind him. We'll talk about it, but I'll have to remind him again, like, hey, do you remember that I said this? Can you please do it? So yeah.
And you've done well.
Thank
no,
you.
really, like, I do need reminding.
Yeah, thank you.
We actually help each other to be a better person. And when he is a better listener, I am less afraid to express my thoughts and my emotions, because some thoughts and emotions, I'm a slow processor, so I need to process my thoughts. And sometimes when I am upset, it takes me a long time to process my thoughts. And because he has become a much better listener, I know that he's not going to jump at me at everything that I say. I know that he's just going to listen through and wait for me to express my thoughts, no matter how long it takes for me to share my emotions. It has definitely gotten better, and therefore we are able to deal with these conflicts. And it takes time. It took time over the years for us to learn to do that.
When you just show that you are available and you're just free to hear even the unspeakable things, it really matters. So I felt it sometimes by presence, just presence. I mean, it's part of listening. And of course, the active listening is something that's very special. Now, Chris, when he shares that he's not good at listening, actually he's good. I choose bad times to tell stories. Yeah? Sometimes while he's watching TV or something, so I'm telling stories. So maybe it's
Playing games.
It's listening and it's choosing the right time to share, I think.
Talk about what times of the day are best for you to have conversations, especially about serious things. Like I, for instance, don't like it when Brendan wants to talk about something serious at like 10:30 at night because I'm tired and I know that I won't sleep well and I won't process things as well. And I have to make sure that Brendan's available for conversations so that he's actually going to remember what I've said, not just expect him to take on board whatever I want to tell him when he's trying to do work. So yeah, I think it's really important to choose those times wisely.
I think too, it's the fundamentals really matter. I mean, like if any of those gimmicks like talking sticks and things work for you, great. But for us, they're just gimmicks. And so what we needed to address was the fundamentals, like listening to the other person. That was absolutely essential. And figuring out what your communication styles are, like how you actually like to have a serious issue raised with you and what you expect that conversation to look like, not the content of it, but how you think it should unfold. And then I guess also is preparing for the fact that your communication style is going to have to adapt once you start having children, because that you can't then just drop everything and have a conversation on the spot once you've got children to care for as well.
When I have a concern, I usually keep to myself, which is a huge dark spot in my life. She picks that up from me, and then she creates an environment which is safe for me to speak and share my concern with her.
Yeah, Oswald is not really good with sharing concerns. I'm normally the one that actually has to say, hey, please, I have to throw it out of him, honestly. And it's tough, but I've learned to give him grace in that area, that, that's his issue. But I think I'm one who normally is able to share concerns. I can even share like on the spot, like, hey, I'm not happy with what you did there.
And then I need to try to receive that.
That's also an issue.
From a very constructive point.
Well, it's not personal, that he just receives what I'm saying and doesn't take it personally.
In the earlier stages, I took it very personally.
Yeah.
And then walking away and coming back later gives perspective to what she was saying.
Yeah.
Actually, you have to learn to listen to your spouse and trying to know and understand what she's feeling, what she's trying to say, not actually what she's saying, but what she's trying to say. You have to communicate. Because you are so different. You think that you're perfect, know each other, but no, you're really different, and you will discover some things really amazing and stressful and annoying and some things you will enjoy a lot, but for growing together you have to communicate, and for learning to communicate you have to communicate.
We live in a country where there's so much diversity, where I'm Zulu, that's my ethnic clan, and my wife is Sutu.
Yeah.
So even there's barriers. You need to find a middle ground, and you need to shut out other voices, because we live in a time that is very opinionated. There's social networks, there's parents, there's families, and all of that. And when we get married, I don't get married to her, I get married to her family. And that's how we are taught, that when you get married, so it's so easy to shut her out and listen to her mom because I'm thinking I'm getting closer to her.
Yeah.
So my advice to newlyweds is that shut everybody out and focus on
each
your
other.
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So remember, we told you you're not going to just be staring at a screen. So this is challenge number 1. We're going to give you the opportunity to interact with your spouse around communication.
But communication doesn't always involve words. So for many couples, you have a special handshake, a way you hold hands, or some sort of loving gesture that's just between the two of you. And we want you to practice that now. And I know for some of you, you're going, we have nothing. Great. So now's your chance to make one up. I know for us, we've been doing our special handhold for many, many years.
It's actually one that's been handed down through the generations of the Smalley family. I can remember your dad telling us, when you hold hands, you gotta put your pinky in between the second and third finger. So when we hold hands, this is what it looks like. And whenever we hold hands like this, for me, it just is a sweet, safe feeling inside, knowing that this is just our special thing.
So go ahead and practice yours or make one up, reminisce when this first started, or if it's new, what does it mean between the two of you?
Feel free to share your handshake or handhold using #perfect10marriage.